I'm really excited about the video that I'm going to share with you today. I'm going to release it in at least two parts, and it's going to combine a little bit of winging it and a little bit of vintage sewing pattern sewing. But in the meantime, since Valentine's Day is coming up, I'm really excited to be partnering with Dossier to share with you a couple of perfumes that they were generous enough to send me. And it was perfect timing because I was just thinking that I wanted to kind of delve into the world of perfumes. And what Dossier does is they reproduce luxury high-end scents at a fraction of the cost. So one of the things I actually really like about Dossier is their minimalist packaging. And myself not being a perfume connoisseur, I don't really know what I'm looking for when I'm looking for a perfume, but they break it down really nicely into basic scents. So I got an Yves Saint Laurent dupe, which is their version is called Fruity Brown Sugar. And I knew when I read that that was something I was definitely interested in, and it does smell amazing. The other one I got was Musky Musk, which is their version of Juliet Has a Gun, Not a Perfume. I think I got that name right. And this is amazing. It smells so clean and so light. I highly recommend it. Dossier does have a 30-day money-back guarantee, so if you're not happy with your scent, you can return it to them for a refund. You can see their whole collection on dossier.co, and I will put a link in the description. I have a fairly extensive vintage sewing pattern collection, and I recently got these ones. This one I found on Etsy, which is a super cute, like 90s pattern. And then I've got these two kind of late 80s patterns. And I decided for Valentine's Day, I wanted to make myself something kind of comfortable and pretty. I ordered this custom printed silk here in a reddish tone for Valentine's Day, but it's also just a color I like, so it will probably find its way to my everyday wardrobe. And I wanted to sew some sort of like a camisole or a slip or something that is comfortable to wear to bed, but also super pretty and fun. So I was looking at these three patterns, trying to decide what I wanted to make. And I really liked the cut of these bottoms, which is view H from this vintage sewing pattern. And it's a toss-up for me between this flared chemise or the cropped camisole, but I think I'm leaning towards the camisole, but I'm going to omit the lace. I don't want to do the lace on it, or at least I don't think I do. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to trace off these patterns because these vintage patterns have not been cut. So I'm going to find all the pieces I need, trace them off on some tracing paper, and then just cut into my fabric. One of the things that you often first notice about vintage lingerie patterns is that their pattern pieces are humongous. That's usually because there's some ease built in. The fit was different because they didn't have as stretchy of fabrics. This is a little different because this was from the 90s. They still had lots of stretch fabrics back then. But when you're getting into like patterns from like the 50s and earlier, the amount of stretch they had in a lot of their knits is different than what we have today with spandex and that kind of thing. So I've got my roll of tracing paper here, and I am going to sew the smaller size, and I'm going to do this high cut leg here. And I have my very professional My Little Ponies Rainbow Dash pencil, which I have borrowed from my daughter. And I'm just going to go ahead and trace around my pattern. And then remember to transfer any of the symbols and markings. Now I'm going to go ahead and find my front piece and my gusset lining and trace everything else. cut out all my pattern pieces. I added just 1/2 inch to the length of the camisole, but otherwise I traced everything exactly as is. And now I'm going to cut out my fabric. So I am dealing with a limited space here, and I also hate cutting fabric. It is the least enjoyable part of sewing to me. So I am going to cut everything on fold. So even though these patterns are developed for bias cut fabrics, you can still cut them on the fold. And I will show you how I do that. And maybe this is sacrilege to some, but again, I'm all about winging it. So I have a single layer of fabric here. And then, so we all know we've got the selvage edge and the warp and the weft, which is your normally when you're putting a pattern on a piece of fabric, your grain line will go parallel to the selvage edge of the fabric. But when you are cutting something on the bias, you want the grain line to go at a 45-degree angle. So I just simply fold mine in this way so that my fold line is now right along the bias. And then I can simply just put my pattern piece, I folded it in half. I can put it on like this, and I can start cutting out my garment. The last thing I'm going to do is cut some bias strips because I'm not doing lace around the neckline. I need something to finish it, and I'm going to do the same finish that I use on my Kate camisole. So I'm just going to find, again, the 45-degree angle point, and I'm just gonna pencil on some strips and cut out a bunch of 1.5 inch strips of bias that I will sew together and turn into my bias tape. And this is going to be a real pain in the butt.